Hey cats, it's Ed, Pat Butcher Bud here. Today I'm going to channel the gravelly power of Rod Stewart to give you an initial review of the Saucony Endorphin Shift 3. Now this is a model I haven't reviewed before, there's been two before it, but this one's completely changed my view of what the Shift actually is. Let's dive into the copious cushion and reflect upon those iceberg vibes. It hasn't got that endorphin smell though, sadly. Thanks for tuning in, people. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. I produce content almost every single day. So if you like shoes and running and all that kind of jazz, you're in the right place. Hit that bell too for notifications of when I launch those new videos for you. It also gives the channel a huge help if you give this video a thumbs up like and share it with your running buddies. The Shift 3 is a shoe that Saucony have sent over to me for the purpose of review. I'm not being paid to make this video, and nor is anybody vetting my views before my valued viewers. The Shift was always a shoe that I thought was for slower runs, recovery type stuff. It was that sort of part of the Endorphin line where you had the Speed and the Pro for some faster sessions. Though I've got to be honest, I'm wrong in terms of it being a heavy model. The Shift 3 is coming in at 309 grams or 10.9 ounces in my UK size 11, US size 12. I've got approximately 42mm of heel stack here in my pair. I think a good 6mm of that is actually the E TPU insole that Saucony have included here. It's made of Power Run Plus foam. It does feel a little bit like something that you get in some of the Innovate shoes from last year. That kind of squashed pellet kind of feel. It really does have some energy return to it. So Saucony again are experimenting with those insoles, or at least stuff just under the insoles, as they've been doing for the last few years. I remember seeing that first in the Triumph 17, I think. There was a layer of Power Run Plus just underneath the insole. Oddly, they've missed out doing that in the Speed 3 though, and that's a shoe that certainly where I've been switching insoles in and out of it has really benefited the shoe. If you got the Speed 3, I do recommend sticking some other insoles in there. I think the ones that are actually in there don't give the shoe true justice. On the website, Saucony give measurements of 39mm in the heel and 35 in the forefoot, and there's about a 4mm drop. That's pretty much what I'm getting here. I think I've got about 38mm in the forefoot, so about the same measurements to scale. We'll start with the upper first. Upperwise, the mesh here on the Shift 3 is actually more like something that we found on the original Endorphin Speed 1. Very odd lace choice here. We've got these kind of rainbow coloured tube-like laces. It certainly adds a splash of colour to this Visi Pro pair that I've got here. Loads of reflective strips everywhere on this one, probably good for some early or late night running. In fact, there's more reflective material on this shoe than I've seen since the Jordan 5 tongue. Fair amount of padding here through the tongue. It relieves all the tension that you get from those slightly odd laces, and it's gusseted, so you've got kind of this two-layer upper situation. Though in the heel there's quite a considerable counter and a lot of padding as well. I did find when the shoe got wet that it took on quite a lot of extra weight. It seems to get sucked up like a sponge by that padded section. I've even got a little bit of suede-like material here just behind where the pull tab is. Now, do be aware that the mesh on this shoe does stain pretty quickly if you're going to pick up a lighter colour, because, you know, that's what people do in the winter. If you're running in muddy or grimy weather, it's just going to get embedded into that mesh. I've tried washing it and getting rid of it, but it's not happening. About 10 miles or 16 kilometres so far, and it's already looking like quite a used shoe. So if you're the type of person that do likes to keep their shoes very clean, which I am not, do bear that in mind. I stand by my ethos that shoes are designed to be worn, and certainly running shoes, they're just going to get dirty. That's just the way it is. Lockdown's good. I'm not finding the upper too generous in terms of material. There's a couple of Saucony shoes I have tried out over the last few years where I've had to cinch the upper material in quite a bit. I had to do that a little bit in the Speed 3 and the Pro 3. I'm not having to do that quite so much with the Shift 3. Certainly a more trainer-like feel in terms of the upper situation here. The padding on the tongue rides up around the ankle just enough to relieve any pressure. If there's one thing I'd probably do to customize the shoe a little bit, is remove these laces, put something a little bit more standard in there. Now, at least with this elasticated pull tab here, it just disappears out the way. It's not sort of hanging off the shoe. It's quite stealthy back there, and I do applaud Saucony for that. I don't like it when you got extra things protruding away from the heel like that, as we get on many other shoes. So little to dislike on the upper here, really. It does the job, and with a lot of comfort as well. Though, like I said, the padding in the heel here got absolutely saturated and added quite a lot of weight to the shoe. So if you're going to do a long run in it, and it's in some very wet and moist conditions, just be aware of that. Maybe not the most ideal shoe for wet winter running. Certainly a comfortable score though, after my initial runs of 2.8 out of 3 for the upper. Just seems a little bit overdone back here in the heel. I don't need all of that cushion. Midsole, midsole, midsole now. Now, midsole wise, the ride in the shift through is very different to what I expected. You always get these expectations of stuff, you know, like how a guitar's going to sound when you plug it into a certain amplifier, how a gig's going to be before you get to it. Well, the shift through was very different to what I thought. Nice and smooth here from the Power Run material with that rolling action. Sorry, Speedroll. A lot more forgiving than I remember the Glide Ride 2 from ASICS to be. Perhaps closer to what we've got in the Glide Ride 3, though not tried that shoe out yet. There's no plate of any sort here. The denser, sort of firmer, yet still forgiving Power Run material provides the rigidity needed for that tech. I found it lovely around my sort of lower pace running of about 8 minutes 15 per mile. That's about 5 minutes 10 seconds per kilometre. Presents a nice stable yet cushioned ride. Doesn't feel overly guided, I suppose. Now the odd thing about this shoe is there doesn't feel like there's a mass of foam under your foot. You don't feel so elevated off the ground as you would do in some super shoes. I think that's down to the actual foam compound that they've used here. Yet you still get some of the benefits of that wonderful Speedroll style feeling. As I thought, the foam does cup up around the foot quite a bit back here in the shift. It's not all underfoot, and that's actually the case with many super shoes out there. People see them and think,
how on earth am I going to run in that stack?
But actually your foot's kind of more along this line here. There's a very prolific plastic clip around here, so those of you after a more stable ride, I wouldn't say a stability shoe really, but you've got that here. There's a little bit more of a controlled feeling in the heel. Maybe something more like the Infinity Run, I suppose, from Nike. Don't expect the squash of Zoom X though. This does feel a little bit more like React. If you do want a hint of stability, but you don't want it too sort of in your face, you want it more on your foot, then this is the shoe to go for. The insole now, that's the interesting bit about this shoe. Very compressive and comfortable. I think it's an attempt to get a bit more mileage out of the more durable EVA material we've got here in the Power Run, but giving it a new lease of life using the Power Run Plus stuff on top. Gives a real nice reliable feeling on foot strike. It doesn't feel too bouncy, just sort of slightly guided. It's sort of smooth and quite luxurious, in fact. Loads of people tell me they don't get on with the overly squashy experiences in lots of the P-back shoes, so this one might be worth checking out for you. It's just a nice balance. It really struck a chord with me around about 7 minutes 30 per mile pace. That's about 4 minutes 40 per kilometre. Just working in my aerobic heart rate zone there. I was having a lovely time. That's not really what I expected of the Shift 3. Odd thing about this shoe, it does feel a little bit softer in terms of the midsole as you get down towards the bottom section of the midsole. Certainly not a shoe for high-paced running or training, but I don't think that's what it's aimed at. Spot on if you're after that rolling feeling delivered by the Speed 3 or the Pro 3, and perhaps the overt squash of those shoes has caused you some stability problems, perhaps if you overpronate. I'm going to give it a solid 2.6 out of 3 for the midsole after my initial runs, only reduced perhaps a little bit by the more limited use case, and my slight worries about the longevity of the midsole material itself and what happens when that Power Run Plus insole starts to wear down. I think that's quite an important part for the underfoot feel of this shoe. Outsole now. Time for an outsole inspection, guys. You can sleep at night, don't worry. It's XT900 rubber here. Those in the know will understand what I'm talking about. In fact, there's not a huge amount of rubber here. They're relying on some exposed foam here from the midsole to provide some extra traction. Reminds me a little bit of like the Rincon 3 or the Mach 4 from Hoka. Again, there's some stability hints here with this extra rubber around the medial side of the outsole. Interesting setup here as the rubber lugs are almost sort of slightly deeper and they're not quite flush with the foam sections of the shoe. Does it work though? The answer is yes. Even on some more slippery surfaces, on some of my initial runs, I found no issue with the outsole. My roots are covered in hidden mud patches, we've got leaves everywhere, and I've not had an issue yet. I mean, we're not talking nice crunchy brown or green leaves, we're talking very slippery, slushy yellow ones. Oh no, I'm talking about autumn running in the UK. That's what you get, and it's just pure danger. Imagine having like thousands of jellyfish everywhere. That's basically what you got. The outsole, of course, does seem to respond better on roads and pavements, equally well in dry or wet conditions, and it's held up okay so far on the autumn terrain. Now, I never get anywhere on Saucony outsole rubber. It just seems impervious to my torture test. So the main issue, I suppose, will be how quickly this EVA wears down that's exposed here in the outsole. Will it hold up any better than the more flexible yet less durable squashier foams of the last few years? Again, I do want to talk about the rubber here in the outsole. It's not quite flush with the foam that you've got around it. I don't know whether that's an attempt again to further reduce the impact, so the foam kind of hits the floor first and then the rubber. Whether it's deliberate or not, I do not know, but it's a slightly odd touch. There's only one major area where debris is going to get caught up here in the outsole if you're running in the winter. That's always an issue. That's this channel that runs from the midfoot right back to the heel. That's just a magnet for debris, and I've had to use a wooden lolly stick to sort of get rid of it. That should be part of a little set that you can get as a runner to clean your shoes. I'm going to give this one a 2.6 out of 3 for the outsole so far. My main worry being how the exposed midsole holds up over time, and if that patterned nature wears off too quickly, you could be in for a bit of an issue there. Value now. So value wise, this one retails in the UK for 140 Earth credits. So that's £140 if you need the translation. It's certainly a shoe that's going to appeal to some people and not others. Perhaps if you're doing a marathon or half marathon training block and you're looking for a shoe that you can do your long runs in with some added comfort, nice rolling shoe that you can just while away the miles, then the Shift 3 could be one for you. If you're running high-paced intervals and reps, you know, to get better for your 5k, then it's probably not really one that's going to work for you. If you want some stabilizing elements, then the Shift 3 has them. I mean, this is no Adios 7 or Deviate Nitro 2. It's just not really aimed at that sort of use. Something closer to a Glide Ride from Asics or perhaps some of the Hoka models, but done much better. Far more comfortable than some of those Hoka models I've tried out. Just feels like there's a little bit more shoe. No issues in the arch here at all, and a very stable, smooth ride. I mean, this shoe could double up as a recovery or easy day shoe, and also one for your longer runs. And I do feel it's the type of shoe that I'm going to be able to recommend for my 3 shoes for the price of 1 rotation videos. I'm almost certain this is going to crop up a few times. Just does a lot of things quite well. Quality wise as well, it's a really well put together shoe from Saucony as usual. I never have any issues there, like glue marks or pieces hanging off or eyelets not like punched out. This one's a really nice shoe straight out the box. Though it is a slightly higher price than a typical daily shoe these days, so it might put a few people off from trying it out. Number of daily trainers knocking around at about 100 to 120 pounds these days. I'd say this one covers more bases though than something like the Velocity Nitro 2 from Puma. Certainly more bases than the Pegasus from Nike, and it's way nicer a ride than the Adistar from Adidas. I'll give this one a 2.6 out of 3 for value after my initial runs. Just reduced again due to the slightly higher price and the slightly more focused use case than we have here. If I've added the scores up correctly, that gives us a 10.6 out of 12 after my initial runs for the Saucony Endorphin Shift 3. Gotta say guys, as shoes go, this is a really beautiful colourway. Just has the right hits in all the right places. May experiment switching the laces out though. Are you picking up the Shift 3 from Saucony? Let me know your thoughts and opinions on this series or anything else down in the comments. Musical interlude time. It seems crazy not to give you a musical recommendation from Elliott Smith round about Halloween. Always had this weird spooky vibe going on, some eerie sounds in there sometimes. Definitely one to check out at Halloween. I think my chief recommendation would be From a Basement on the Hill. This was the album that he was recording just before his death and they kind of finished off afterwards, but it still has the Elliott Smith vibes in Spades. Don't Go Down is such a track. It kind of sounds like a wander around a fun house. There's all these weird quivering, wavering sorts of sounds everywhere. The vocal sounds positively scary. Everything sounds a bit off-center. It's exactly the sort of music for Halloween. The acoustic track, The Last Hour, is quite spooky too. You can imagine somebody sat on a porch singing this with an old battered acoustic guitar, dressed up as a mummy. In fact, the whole track kind of sounds a little bit like a ghost is singing it from somewhere else. It really is odd. Certainly one of my favourite Elliott Smith albums, but I like them all, so I'm a bit biased. Go and check this one out, guys. From a Basement on the Hill by Elliott Smith. Thanks for tuning in, people. It's always appreciated. If you've enjoyed the video today, give this video a thumbs up, like, and share it with your running buddies. And if you haven't done so already, help the channel out too by hitting that subscribe button and clicking the bell below for notifications when I fire out the new videos for you. My name's Eddbud, and I'll be seeing you